Today's podcast is brought to you by Company Cam, the only app every painter needs. Company Cam makes it dead simple to communicate, document, and problem solve with your crew no matter where you are. Company Cam brings documentation, communication, and liability protection together in one simple, easy-to-use app for you and your entire team. Take unlimited photos and videos, share custom reports, create flawless before and afters, and even communicate and share progress with homeowners, with galleries and project timelines, all from your smartphone. Company Cam, the only app every painter needs. Check it out at companycam.com/paint radio. That's us, Paint Radio. companycam.com/paint radio. Or check them out in your app store. Company Cam, the only app every painter needs.
Welcome to Paint Radio with your host, Emily Howard and Andrew Dwyer.
Paint Radio, baby. I'm Andrew. Emily is here. Emily, have you ever used any search engine other than Google?
Internet Explorer, AOL back in the day. Nothing recently.
So when you first started on the old internet, were you using Google or were you using AOL?
No, I mean, I'm sure when I first started, it was just AOL, right? I don't even know if there was a Google when, I don't remember the timeline of events.
There definitely was not a Google. Web crawler, Alta Vista. By the way, I still have an AOL email account. It's not my primary account, but I do have it. People love to just mock AOL, but I'll be honest, the AOL email interface, I think, is far superior to Gmail. I don't use it to do much important stuff because people think so low of people who use AOL. But I'm going to go on record. AOL email interface, superior to Gmail. Speaking of superior guests, that's what we bring to Paint Radio, and that is certainly true today. You know him, Martin Morgan, General Manager for ProPainter Websites, longtime friend of the program. Martin, how are you?
Hey, Andrew, I'm doing great. I love the reference to the old search engines, the old AOL reference, Alta Vista. Yeah, we're really turning back the clock on those.
Have you always used Google? What was the first search engine you used?
No. So I think it was probably AOL, although I slightly remember Alta Vista. Right? So we're talking mid-90s probably. And,
right.
It was back in the day with this newfangled thing called email, and you had no idea what you were doing or what was going to happen. And it took you a while, and you kind of shot something off, and you hoped that it might land somewhere and you might get a response. But I'm dating myself, I guess.
But that is the topic for today. We're talking about search engines, specifically Google, because apparently Emily tells me most things I learn from Emily. And Emily tells me that Google has changed their algorithm. I guess they're always changing their algorithm, but they list results in a bit of a different way these days, Martin. So what change is Emily referring to? What should we know about?
Right, Andrew. And they are constantly tinkering with those search results. And so sometimes you might notice something, many more often times you don't see anything. And most people don't realize anything has changed. But recently, within the last month or so, they've made some major changes to those search engine results pages, which potentially have big ramifications for painting contractors. And primarily what they've done is within the local pack. And that is that area where if you search for any local services, you'll usually see 3 or 4, and we'll keep referencing painting contractors because that's what we're here to talk about, right? So you might see somebody who has an ad toward the top of that, and then you'll have 3 listings really below that top one, which was an ad. And up until about a month ago, you would always see where there would be a map above that local pack area. And the most recent study that we've seen, about 33% of the clicks occurred on the local pack when people were looking for local services, consumers. most often. Well, who else would look for local services? And then that map area would get 8 to 10%. So we've got this new change in those search results. And if you're looking at them on a desktop, most often you're going to see this change where now the map is moved to the right of the local pack, and the local pack is moved up a little bit higher in those search results. So we expect that to have a little bit more impact on the local pack. So you might see more clicks coming in through there. But the most important change is that there's now a drop-down menu on the local pack where a person, the user, the searcher, can now sort by, and there's a sort by option. This never existed before. And what's even more important, likely, is that it defaults to best match. So in the past, distance was always thought of once you picked your category, which painting contractors, there wasn't a lot to pick. Pretty much everybody would pick painter, maybe painting, but most likely painter. So that wasn't really a factor. Most often it was based on location, which means really how close are you to the person searching, which for many painting contractors was a little difficult to figure out because as service area businesses, a lot of times they're not picking a brick and mortar location or an address so much as just picking a service area. But now if Google is saying we're serving up the best match, that opens up the possibilities significantly for painting contractors. It also increases really the impact of that Google business profile and the ability to be found within local search results.
I feel like this always happens, right? You get everything all worked out and figured out, and then Google changes its algorithm and you got to go back and start from the beginning. So what are some of the changes that people need to be thinking about? You know, is this new change? I mean, it's already rolled out, it's already happening, but what are some changes that they need to do either with their websites or SEO or, like you said, their Google business page?
Yeah, the key part of this is that Google business profile. So as a painting contractor, if you have not gone in and completed your Google business profile and pretty much done everything you can do with it, you want to do that as soon as you possibly can. Because if best match is now the default, whereas before, really, you could get away with doing the minimum amount, right? You could pick your service area, make sure that your category is correct. Again, you've got your service area, make sure any address information you have in there is accurate. Make sure your phone number matches your business number. Make sure the name is correct. And if you have a website, make sure those things all match with each other. Make sure you have a link to your website. A lot of times, that could be about it. But now, if Google is really picking best match, it really presents an opportunity because there's many other things within there, like a description of your business, like services, making sure that you're highlighting all the different services that you provide. And in some ways, you might want to figure out how to say the same thing like 3 or 4 different ways. So it's much more search engine optimization of a Google business profile than it ever was before. And it also brings in elements potentially of your website. So you want to absolutely make sure that link is there. If you have the ability to link it, there's a piece there that says services and products within your Google business profile. You want to make sure that that's linked to like your services page on your website as well. So primarily the number one thing to do is just really max out everything you possibly can within that Google business profile.
Does Google make these tweaks simply to stay ahead of people who they think are trying to game the system? Or does Google make these tweaks because they think it leads to better and more accurate results and they got to be Google for a reason and this is how they're going to continue to be Google?
It's a little bit of both of those things. Primarily, and what they will say, of course, is that Google is trying to give the user the best possible result to meet what they are looking for. And so you do see some of that, right? That's why all results that anybody gets within Google are personalized results. So if you've been on a website a significant amount of time, and that's a site you often visit, and you look for something that seems to search for something related to that website, that's why Google will alter what your search results look like versus what my search results look like. And we know for sure that happens in different locations as well. So Google really is trying to give the user an excellent experience. They're trying to answer the question as quickly as possible that somebody is searching for. It's also in part why they've created things like featured snippets at the top, or why you might see the people also asked. So they're trying to answer the question, but they're also trying to keep people on Google as much as possible, right? Because the more people are on any Google properties, the more ads they're going to see, which means the more likely Google is to make money. So it is not all for the advantage of the user.
Sure.
But that is an element, and that is important. And also, they are trying to stay ahead of people who might be gaming the system in some ways, which is why, the title, the name in your listing is really important. Because if you have natural keywords in the name of your business, that's likely going to influence where you show up and help you search better, which is why somebody who has, painting in their name has a natural advantage over a business name that, as a painting contractor, doesn't include painting in that name. However, if you see people you are competing with who are cheating within the local search engine, within local search in their Google business profile, then you absolutely want to report them to Google, and they can flag that Google business profile, and they will not allow them to show up in any other searches at all.
Wow. Do you know what the process is for researching those types of complaints? Like, is this anything that anybody needs to be concerned about with ex-employees or super crazy unethical competitors?
That's a good question, Emily. I will tell you, we've put them in because we look out for our customers to see if within their area there's somebody who is keyword stuffing the name of their business. And it definitely does happen. What happens with Google is that within your account, let's say, you build up credibility, right? So if I'm reviewing businesses, if I've offered suggestions, so for instance, for us, right, we have customers, painting contractors throughout the country. We'll check on their Google business profile. We'll manage it or not, but we will offer suggestions. And so if we see, for instance, that somebody doesn't have a website listed, but we know they have a website, then we'll suggest they're a website. And usually when you've built up credibility within Google's mind, you've proven that you're a real person, then they'll make those changes pretty quickly. The same thing as if you were to make a complaint. So if you've been active within your profile and doing things, it's more likely to have an impact. If you have not, like if you've never done anything on there and you just set up an account on Google and the first thing you try to do is get somebody penalized for their name, it's highly unlikely that Google is going to do what you've asked them to do. So there are some checks and balances within the system. So it's not just do anything that somebody suggests them do.
Martin, you talked about natural keywords. So let's say the name of the painting business is Dwyer's Super Silky Fine Finishes, and the word painting is not in there. And as great of a name as that is, what would you suggest? Would you suggest that the company actually change their name, or is there an end around on Google that you can include the word painting?
So really interesting. There's a annual survey of SEO experts, and these are people that are in it, serving all industries every single day, a lot of focus on local search. And one of the things that was in there, and it was really interesting to us because we talked about it a little bit, is they always ask, what are you doing more of? What are you doing less of? It may have been the very top of the things they're doing more of is working with their clients to officially change their name so they can do better in local search. So could I recommend that you change your name so you would do better in the local path? Yeah. Is it a huge pain because you have to go through lots of areas to officially change the name of your business? Absolutely. So it's one of those things that you have to weigh as a business. Is this really worth the effort that it'll take us to do this? In some cases, the answer may be yes, because maybe you haven't had to file for all sorts of permits or business licenses or other things. Depends in part probably on your state. And in some instances, it's just the barriers to doing that are so big that it's not really worth your time.
What about, you mentioned reviews too. Do you have a sense of how many or how recent of reviews you need to have to start floating to the top of this pack? And then also, any strategies for getting and dealing with reviews? Because that's a whole other thing that has to be done.
There are no hard and fast rules as far as numbers of reviews or ranking, but what I would say is this. In that same survey, they asked, not specifically for ranking, because the survey happened before the changes started to take place here. And so the general idea was still pick the right category, and then you're kind of based on where your location is based on the searcher. So they weren't even thinking looking forward, okay, now we've had this huge change. What does that mean for rankings? That's not factored into it. But reviews absolutely will factor into that if it is best matched now, if it continues the way it is. But where the biggest impact on reviews are conversions. So you're in the local pack, and me as a homeowner, I'm looking to see, okay, here are these painting contractors. Who am I going to call? Who am I going to give a chance to? Whose website am I going to go to? 4 of the top 5 factors for how consumers make their choice of who to contact in the local pack were review related. Number 1 factor was, what is your average star review here? Other factors, how many reviews do you have? How recent did you get a review? What's the sentiment in the review? So reviews are absolutely critical. They haven't to this point been as important, the actual setup of the rankings. However, we expect that to change. But they've been critically important to consumers and how they make their decisions on who to reach out to. So what I would encourage people to do, especially because this can also now impact it, and we're seeing this in the local pack, where they're pulling in information from reviews, right? So a big thing to do is ask people for reviews. And we've got a lot of customers who are really hesitant to do that. We highly encourage you to do that. And also ask them to include the service that you provided in the review to specifically reference that. So if you were doing cabinet painting, ask them to reference that it was a cabinet painting job. If it's interior or exterior, ask them to specifically reference those things and to be as specific as possible, because what we're finding now is within these listings here on the local pack, it's also including some additional information. Like usually it's an additional line of information, and they're pulling it in from reviews wherever they can. So that can be impactful, so that if somebody, they may not be searching, as easily for me, I'm searching for painting contractor. They might be searching for house painting or living room painting, kitchen painting, something along those lines. And if you have customers who reference that service within the review, then it's going to increase the likelihood that your Google business profile shows up in the local pack. And then it's going to have like a little quote from that review with that keyword highlighted that person searched for. So asks for specific services to be referenced within the reviews.
That's really good advice. I Googled painters near me, and I'm noticing immediately the first listings that are non-paid and not on a map is Home Advisor and CertaPro. And that makes me wonder, and I'm curious if you know, is this going to favor some of the larger franchises and lead generation sites and even any kind of company out there that's bidding work on a national level and subbing it out?
It shouldn't so much. And that's because, so the process for the local pack versus organic search below it is a little bit different. And more often than not, so where you're seeing that, Emily, they're pulling in information from those places like Home Advisor, or sometimes they might pull in information from franchises in there as well. But those that pull in multiple painting contractors where they're showing, here are some options, here are some lists, it shouldn't be as impactful to them. And in fact, if it means that more people use the local pack to make their decisions, then it will likely mean that those bigger groups or those websites where they're pulling in almost listings in and of themselves will likely have less impact on how somebody is found, but it puts more weight on making sure that your Google business profile, that you're optimizing that to the whatever level you possibly can.
Martin, what's the best way for contractors to quantify how important Google is, to put a number on the number of leads they're receiving as a result of Google?
We always encourage the painting contractors to ask everybody that they talk to, any lead that they get in the door, where did you see us? Where did you find us? Where did you hear us? Because what we find oftentimes is that they will underestimate the number of leads they're getting from online sources because somebody calls, and then they'll think, oh, it was a call or it was a referral. When in reality, it was somebody that found them online. It could be the local pack. It might be through the organic search results. So we always encourage painting contractors, whenever you get a call, whenever you get a contact from somebody, if you don't automatically have it built in to figure out where it came from, just ask the question, where did you see us? Where did you hear of us? And it's so difficult because, without getting too detailed into the whole marketing world of attribution and last attribution versus distributed attribution and all of those things, you have a homeowner or a customer, if it's commercial, not a homeowner, and just ask them, where did you hear of us? The other thing that you can do now is Google has also built out a system within the Google Business Profile that you can track your calls, and you can utilize that. So it'll automatically track any calls that come in, and they'll send notifications. And that's really the Google Business Profile, the local pack, and the maps and how that's working for you as well. But they don't necessarily tell the whole story in there either. So what's helpful is, instead of taking one thing as, this is what it was, is watch your trends over time. And then that helps you understand, compare the information Google's sharing with you with what you're hearing from the people that you're talking to. And then that gives you an idea, really a good way to track the rise in the fall, if that happens, of what you're getting through those online sources.
So any thoughts or ideas about the future? Like we said, as soon as you get comfortable, it changes. Any thoughts on when there could be new changes rolling out, or anything that you guys are seeing and forecasting?
I think the key thing is that it's clear that for painting contractors, it's challenging for Google, because as a service area business, they can't just point people to one address. So different from those who may have specific brick and mortar where somebody goes there. They go there to get their work done, or that's where they go, like a restaurant, right? Even though that's not happening as much as a lot more delivery over a smaller service area, whereas painting contractors, much larger service area really to cover. And I think that you just have to continue making as much use of the tools you have. And we've been saying for years that, if you're a new painting contractor, first thing you need to do is do everything you can with what was Google My Business and what is now the Google Business Profile, because Andrew mentioned it at the beginning as far as the search engines, right? Google's the 800-pound gorilla. They have like 90% of the market in the United States when it comes to search, right? And Google used to rely on other sources to pull information for search. But now they've got this great thing called Google Business Profile. And they're basically asking you as a business to include all of your information on there as much as possible. And why would they rely on any other sources if they've got it all right there? They don't so much. They want one other source, or they may rely on one other source, which is most often a website. So they use those two things as the two big things to pull data and information to show, okay, yeah, they're credible. It says the same thing on their website. Or if somebody's looking in organic search, looking at a website, yep, this matches the Google Business Profile, we're good. So my encouragement would be that Google Business Profile has slowly become more and more important. With this change, it's likely going to be even more important. So monitor your Google Business Profile, pay attention to the changes that Google makes and the new things they roll out within that Google Business Profile, and jump on them as quickly as you can and make use of those things. Because again, it's Google, it's the 800-pound gorilla. We may not all love them, but if we're not playing nice with them, there's a chance that it could really hurt us. So watch that Google Business Profile, take advantage of the opportunities they offer on there.
800-pound gorilla, no question about that. And generally in this country, we don't like, well, I don't want to call it a monopoly because that has a very specific definition and that doesn't necessarily apply here. But Google's clearly the runaway winner, obviously, Martin. Is that a necessary evil, or do you personally think that Google actually does a pretty good job and that they're not perfect to work with, but as far as a business partner or as a tool that we all have to use, and nobody uses them more than you. I mean, you're neck deep in this stuff. What is your personal opinion of Google?
I think they do a good job. I think they are trying to serve the users as well as they possibly can. I use Google all the time. Google is the thing that I use. I use Google Maps. I use Google to search for anything. When I'm thinking of, all right, we're going to be in this place, what is around there? What types of restaurants might be there? Can I just look at the map and see what is around? To me, if I'm looking for local service businesses, I'm using Google, always searching, monitoring it, check. I think it's a good tool. It's a good resource. And you think from a business standpoint, when you have the opportunity to just build all of this stuff out, right? In the past, it hasn't been as common that you could provide this much information to your potential customers for no cost. The Google Business Profile, there's no cost for that at all. And you can just go in there and build this whole thing out. And you've got this big platform, take advantage of that opportunity. You don't have to do any ads, any of that. I think it can be a really good tool. I think they are trying to help the users as much as possible. They're definitely not perfect. And they are experimenting constantly. I forget what the number was, but the number of experiments or like A/B tests they're conducting at any one time would just blows my mind, because I think about that and how hard it is to pull off one of those, and what it takes to conduct that many at any one time is crazy. So I think they are focused on the user. They're trying to make things better. And so I think they're good.
That's great to hear, because that's certainly my inclination, though I certainly don't have nearly as much experience as you do. So that's tremendous to hear that it's an asset, it's an opportunity, it's not an obstacle. And you're right. In many ways, most of those assets and opportunities are free. So that's a pretty great thing. One thing, as before we close up, you've been on so many times, I just sort of assume everybody knows Martin Morgan, but shame on me, I shouldn't assume that. For the listeners who are not familiar with ProPainter websites, give them a little thumbnail of what ProPainter websites can do for painting contractors.
Yeah, definitely. So we manage the web presence for painting contractors. We're focused on painting contractors, and we used to be almost all websites, which is why we're called ProPainter websites. But as we've seen these things, like the Google Business Profile, especially grow in importance, we help our customers with that as well. And we've always got our eyes on, okay, what things are going to be most relevant for painting contractors when it comes to attracting customers through the web. And those are usually the things that we've got our eyes on and or are working with customers on.
Love it. He's Martin Morgan, General Manager for ProPainter websites. Check them out more at ProPainterWebsites.com. And if you're in the mood for more resources, obviously you know where to go. PaintMag.com. More resources, less of me. That's why it's so great. Have a great day, everybody.